Hello, everyone, to this edition of Radiology and Efficiency. With us today is Wayne Baldwin, who comes with a wealth of experience as the Chief Executive Officer of GemState Radiology and Intermountain Medical Imaging. Previously, he's worked as an executive in other groups, as well as the CEO of different radiology. And as a first on our podcast, we actually have a real healthcare attorney. So personally, I'm excited to see what type of different insights you have. Wayne, do you have anything else to add about your background?
No, I've just been doing it for a long time and made all the mistakes there are to make and, learned from them.
Understand. So if I were to start out just on running a business and considering reimbursements always fall, what type of financial metrics do you use to run your groups?
I'm not sure whether I'd categorize them as financial or operational, but to me, they're kind of related. One of the things that has become more of an issue over time has been the patient time of service collections because deductibles have gotten bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And so, paying attention to that has been an important aspect of trying to manage our bad debt and make sure that that growing piece of our accounts receivable is managed well. You're always paying attention to what you're getting paid per study. And that's something that really shows probably more if you've got a problem than, if something's going wrong where data's not getting to your billing company or it's not being captured correctly or whatever. You should know what you're going to be getting paid for the most part. And if there's a drop or something looks off, then, that deserves some attention. But primarily, I think some of the things that go hand in hand are the actual utilization of our equipment. A long time ago, I heard an analogy that I think is apt that we're a lot like an airline in that we play with very expensive toys, and the fuller that we can keep them, the more they're operational, the more they're scanning patients. Just like the more people are on an airplane, the more money you make on a financial side. And so the utilization factors of our equipment is a big thing that I like to pay attention to, just to make sure that we're not being inefficient in how we schedule. At the same time, we have to be careful not to overburden our staff and make it feel like a cattle call for our patients. For me, it gets back to, I think there's 5 key elements that I look at. One is quality. Are we doing well? And I think that has an impact on our financial performance, actually. Patient service and satisfaction is always the first thing for us, and that flows through in a very important way. Cost factors, for me are, we have some key cost drivers in radiology. Staffing models and labor costs are always kind of a challenge, especially as you have a shortage of technologists, shortage of staff in general, making sure that you're optimized on your staffing model, the combination of technologists and tech assistants and tech aides and having the right people doing the right things. Equipment service and uptime, like I said, is a big deal for us. We're always trying to pay attention to supply costs and all that, but that's really not a huge driver of economic performance for us. And then in today's world, IT costs are a huge issue with investment in AI that's kind of on everybody's mind and what's that going to look like. And I think we're barely scratching the surface, both in our organization and as an industry as a whole. Radiology is just really getting started, and there's going to be, if it's anything like PACS, when PACS was introduced many years ago, there's a whole bunch of different PACS vendors out there, and then over time that consolidates. That's going to be a challenge for radiology going forward with AI. You're going to have to manage that pretty carefully. That will be an expense, whether that's going to be, if you're an outpatient provider, what that looks like on your financial statement, how much time and energy it's going to take to really know what AI you want and what's going to work for you versus how much of, if you're a hospital practice, is just going to be handed to you by your hospital, said, this is what you're using. How much involvement do you have in that? I think those are going to be key elements in cost going forward. And so, we're trying to pay attention to that. And clearly, if you've got good AI, it can make your radiologist much more productive. And that has clearly an impact on your financial success as well. As far as revenue goes, key drivers on revenue are important to us. What are we getting paid? Having a relationship with your health plans, for me, is a very important aspect of how we manage some of those financial parameters on the revenue side.
Some of the items you mentioned are strategic and long term, and then a few that you started with, such as equipment utilization or debt collection, seem to be some of those things that you need to monitor more closely. Are there feedback loops, systems that you have integrated to help kind of correct the ship on those when they seem to be awry?
Yeah. We have KPIs on each of those things that we look at on a regular basis just to see how we're doing. I've got a report that shows me how much money we're collecting at time of service. I got reports that show me what my accounts receivable look like over time. I got reports that show me how well we're utilizing our equipment on percentage of uptime basis kind of thing. All of those things are, if it's a key element of what we need to track, we got a KPI for it. And I look at it anyway on a regular basis just to see how we're doing. And I try and get my leaders in the practice to look at those financial metrics to make sure that they know how we're doing and what that means to the overall performance of the organization.
It seems that for utilization, it might be tough to go dialing for some extra MR or DEXA scans if the equipment's utilization's falling too low.
I don't know what necessarily drives the decisions to refer patients or not for a lot of our referring providers, but we seem to be quite busy, and maybe that's a function of our market. I'm in Boise, Idaho, and we're growing like gangbusters here, and that's a function of the market and the overall economic and population growth here. So we're just trying to keep up. I mean, we're running fast, so making sure that we have as much capacity as we can is really important for us.
If I could change the conversation a little bit to specific kind of workflows, do your group have identified the single biggest bottleneck or bottlenecks that you have that you say, if we fix this one, we can handle more?
Yeah, I'm not sure we've got one single big bottleneck, to be honest. It's more of a death of a thousand cuts in some respects. In that some days I feel like I'm playing whack-a-mole where, one thing will pop up and you hit that and then something else pops up. For example, we have one aspect that's a bottleneck for us is our patient intake. And sometimes it seems to be fine, and others, for reasons which I can only assume are based on people losing focus or whatever that might be, but getting actually patients scheduled can sometimes be a challenge for us, and that I think is a process that for us we paid some attention to, and at times it's been really really good, and at times it has been not so good. And that includes things like order processing and even answering the phone. Sometimes I think we're understaffed, and sometimes I think it's our systems, and sometimes I think it's both. So we're looking at a lot of ways to try and improve that aspect of the practice. We do have some limitations on our equipment as well, and we've got, particularly with MRI, there's a lot of solutions to that out there now. We're a Siemens shop for the most part, and we're looking at software that will increase acquisition speeds on each of those scanners. We did do a trial basis on one scanner. It seems to work quite well. So we're probably going to make that investment, upgrade the rest of the scanners that are eligible to increase the scan times and the efficiency. And yeah, the nice thing about that too is the patients love it. They're not in that hole for, that little tube for as long as they would have to be otherwise. And so, we've had patients who come back for their second or third MRI, and with a new scanner, they say, well, am I done already? It's a pleasant surprise for them. So it helps patient care. I think it helps patient satisfaction, and it helps us get more throughput. So those are the key elements I think that we're looking at right now.
Having known some of the engineers at Siemens were behind some of those improvements, I do know it is virtually magic, the
Yeah.
stuff they're able to achieve.
Yeah, it's quite impressive. We're pretty happy with what they've done. Obviously, it's the way of the future. Again, getting back to the technology, what are you going to invest in? That's an easy one. Whenever you can increase, 4 or 5 scans a day on an MRI, it's kind of a no-brainer. So that's where we are with that.
Any workflow improvements that you guys have implemented over the past year that you can look back and say, yeah, this has worked out well for us?
Gosh, yeah, there's a bunch of little ones, really. There's no big, really nothing big that we've done. I've only been with the organization 2.5 years, and one of the things that was really missing was that we had a group of very good people, but they didn't really understand how what they did on any given task or any given day has an impact on the overall success of the organization. What their puzzle piece was, they understood pretty well, but how it related to the entire picture was not quite as clear. And so as we tried to educate people about what they do and how important it is, some light bulbs started to go on, and I think people started to see that Oh, yeah, it really does make a difference if I do that as part of my job at this stage of the process versus waiting till it gets to the technologist and the tech's going, "Oh, wait a minute, this patient has an implant and I'm only hearing about it now." Those are the kinds of things that we had to make sure people understood how important that was to the overall. And that's kind of a big example, but there are a lot of smaller ones along the way. And we did actually, with the new Medicare CPT codes for MRI safety, we did dedicate a very experienced MRI tech. We've got a number of magnets, and so having that person go through and make sure that every patient who had an implant was safe to scan was a big deal. And now that we can get paid for it, it was really a lot easier to do. But that was one thing that probably the biggest change in the overall scope of how we do things that made a difference. Just getting patients set up and ready to go so that when they show up for their scan, you can actually scan them. It's a good thing.
What's interesting to me is everyone I have talked to running an organization has mentioned MRI and patient intake and just the processes
Yeah.
they're going through. So it's interesting to me to see that coming up over and over again.
Yeah, it is a big deal. It can slow you down, and if you don't do it right, it's a patient safety issue. And so, you got to do it. It's got to be right. Yeah, that's one of those things that's kind of non-negotiable, right? You just have to do it.
You may be in a unique situation because you're in the beautiful area of Boise, and a lot of people have decided that they're going to move out there. How is retaining staff and or morale? Because when you talk about that flip side of being overworked,
For us, it's a really interesting market. We have two major health systems that run healthcare in Boise, St. Luke's and St. Alphonsus. And because they're hospitals, the pay scale for them is a little bit higher than the pay scale would normally be for an outpatient imaging center where you're not working overnight and you're not working the same hours. And so that's driven the cost of us retaining our staff up. And we've had to deal with that. It's a reality. And, if you ignore it at your peril. And so that said, there's a number of things that we have done to try and make our workplace a really good place to be, not only for the technologists, but for everybody else. And part of that is helping people understand how important their role is along the way. And part of it is training, part of it is having the right leadership in place. And I think as we've kind of progressed along that path, it's been interesting to see that people really are dedicated to what they do. I think people are in healthcare because they want to help people for the most part. And it's, gives you kind of a good feeling about your organization when they really focus on helping people day in and day out. And so we try and make that the primary focus of what we do. We measure success in four ways. One is exceeding patients' expectations. Two is exceeding the referring provider's expectations. Three is exceeding the owner's expectations. And four, which is really important, is exceeding our own internal expectations about dealing with each other on the team so that it becomes a good place to come to work. It becomes a place where you're supportive, becomes a place where that team environment is really important. And if you exceed expectations in those four areas, you got a pretty good organization, no matter what kind of an organization you have. And we're not perfect at it by any stretch, but we're getting better.
absolutely. You've mentioned a number of times, and many leadership books speak to the importance of everyone understanding, no matter what their role is, understanding their contribution to the whole picture and the whole process.
It's something I continually try and people probably get tired of me hammering on it, but it's really important. It's funny because I appeared at a meeting of our schedulers just a couple of weeks ago. And they kind of looked at me like, "What are you here for? You're the CEO. I mean, what's the big deal?" And I said, "Look, you're the very first contact that any one of our patients has with IMI, with Intermountain Medical Imaging. That first impression is critical to what they're going to feel about how they've been treated." And it's like, oh yeah. And I think again, as we go through that and make everybody aware of how important their contribution is along the way, our patient satisfaction scores are really quite good. Yeah, I'm really proud of the team and how they do their jobs, how they take care of people, and they make a difference in people's lives every day.
That's fantastic. How is the radiology staff, considering that if they're in Boise, there's probably some quality of life kind of thoughts?
The radiology staff, I feel bad for them, to be honest. They are so busy. There's such a high volume of work, and we don't have enough. I need 8 more radiologists right now. I got 4 coming, but that's not till next summer. And maybe we'll get a couple more if we're lucky. It's tough. It's really tough. They're working really, really hard and, trying to make their job as smooth as we can make it is really, one of the challenges that we have. Our hospital partner just upgraded their PAC system. It'll be good once they get all the bugs ironed out, but technology is a big part of what they do. And when the technology is not working right, it makes life really rough. When it works better, they start to feel a little bit better about what they're doing. But I can remember if a radiologist was producing 40, 45 RVUs a day, they were doing pretty good. And now you're a slug if you're doing 40 or 45 RVUs a day. You get a good talking to by somebody because you're not keeping up. And, that pressure is constantly on those guys. And, it's tough. And then you have for them having the pressure of being at the hospital, dealing with the multitude of questions that come up from, others in the hospital community. It's rough.
So looking forward, RSNA is coming up. What do you guys have on your wish list or things to investigate will improve for this next year?
The problem is that the wish list for most of the radiologists is just get me some help. They don't really even know what that might look like other than more radiologists, sitting at workstations. For me, it would be foolish, frankly, for me to think that I could know everything that I need to know about the technology advancements that are happening in radiology. I don't know that there's a good solution for that out there right now. If you're running a practice, trying to break time away to look at the next latest, greatest tech thing, I mean, I could do that 24 hours a day, all day long for a long time and still not know everything I need to know.
Yeah.
But for me, that's one of the challenges that I see going forward is how do we get our arms around that? And if there's some solution for that out there, that'd probably be my biggest wish list. And I think PACS providers are probably going to fill that role to some degree, like going out and vetting AI tools that might work well with their particular PACS system, packaging those up, and my suspicion is that that's probably going to happen more and more often with a lot of PACS providers. I mean, you start to see that a little bit already, right? Where whatever PACS it is says, oh, check this out. This is a really cool little tool you've got. So maybe that's where we end up looking. But if I had a magic wand, that would be it.
You're alluding to the fact that we're probably in those early days, and therefore you have lots of little bit solutions that'll all start coalescing together and something a little more holistic over time.
Yeah, and if it's like the last kind of revolution with PACS, where that was kind of the initial technology revolution, right?
Yeah.
In how radiologists do their job. This one, if it follows the same suit, you may buy the latest really nice AI tool to do whatever it is, and next year that AI company has been sucked up by who knows who.
Right.
And what does that mean to that tool? Is it still going to be the same? Or are they going to incorporate it into something else that you have to buy if you want to use the tool? Who knows, right? There's a lot yet to happen. And that's kind of what makes me a little nervous as well. And maybe, with some of the bigger PACS players, it won't be as big a deal because they'll be doing kind of the sucking up of all the little guys. But
Yeah.
please,
Your favorite tool will always be sucked up by the PAC system that you're not using, right?
correct. You can see that now where certain vendors are buying AI companies. Radnet Deep Health bought iCAD. Everybody uses iCAD. Now what?
Right. Well, thank you very much for the insights, Wayne.
Yeah, my pleasure.
I hope that this will be beneficial to everybody who listens. I appreciate your time. Hi, this is Andy again. I do these interviews to keep close to all of you trying to run, grow, and optimize practices. It's my way of giving back. So I do hope you enjoyed this interview. Remember, give this video a thumbs up and share a comment. Also, if you know someone I should interview, please connect us. And if you are still dictating everything, please reach out. All my contact information is below. Thanks. And this is Andy again. I do these interviews to keep close to all of you trying to run, grow, and optimize practices. It's my way of giving back. So I do hope you enjoyed this interview. Remember, give this video a thumbs up and share a comment. Also, if you know someone I should interview, please connect us. And if you are still dictating everything, please reach out. All my contact information is below. Thanks.